All right. When you, in May of 2008, when you signed this declaration, did you have a copy of the calendar?
If you recall.
I don't recall.
Isn't it a fact, sir, and we'll get to it later, that you told at least one reporter that you could prove Mr. Mosley knew that he was taking illegal substances because you had the calendars to prove it? And that was prior to May 30th, 2008.
I may have said that, but the reality is that his calendars and his lab results and those results were published in a Sports Illustrated article because they were presented at a WADA conference by Jeff Nowitzki and Matt Perella from the government.
Is your testimony that they presented the actual calendars at this, whatever it was, presentation?
Well, they certainly presented the lab results. I'm not sure about the calendars.
What lab results did they present?
His hematocrit results.
But the calendars, you don't know one way or the other?
Not specifically the calendars. I know from reading the article where they gave the specific numbers on the lab results.
When was the first time you recall seeing the calendars after Mr. Mosley commenced an action against you in San Francisco?
I don't recall.
Well, didn't you go and look for them pretty quickly since you were now a defendant in a defamation suit?
I'm sure I looked.
Okay. And do you remember whether or not you consulted the calendars before you wrote this you signed this declaration?
If you recall.
Once again, I found certain things, but I did not find, all the documents. I don't believe that what we received may even be complete from the government.
So as of now, if we look at the top of Exhibit 4, there's a notation, is there not, about the money that was to be paid?
We took Exhibit 4 away, so I don't... Thank you. Yes, those are notations about the money.
All right, and this is your handwriting on this,
yes,
correct?
It is.
And your testimony is, well, you would agree, if you look at the top of this calendar and look at paragraph 11 of Exhibit 5, where you discuss what the cost of the drug program was, that your affidavit or your declaration tracks what's on the top of this calendar.
In general terms, yes.
All right. Is it your testimony that in May of 2008, almost 5 years after you met with Mr. Mosley once, you remembered independently exactly what Mr. Mosley had paid you?
Well,
Objection. He testified. Where are you getting that?
Well, I'm
saying. Oh, you're saying you're referring to the
declaration. You wrote in the declaration the cost of the drug program was $1,850, i.e., $900 for the EPO, $600 for the clear and the cream, $150 for blood work, and $200 for transportation from the airport.
that's correct.
My question is, in May of 2008, the end of May of 2008, almost 5 years, I'll withdraw the question. Are you testifying that at the end of May in 2008, almost 5 years after you met once with Mr. Mosley, you were able to recall exactly what Mr. Mosley had paid and what the breakdown was?
I had seen these documents, you know, and looked through some of this on several occasions.
So you had seen, prior to signing your declaration, the calendar, correct?
Yes.
And notwithstanding the fact that you had seen and that was the basis for your stating the amount of money that had
Well, that
been
wasn't the
paid.
entire basis, no. You know, part of it was me having the recollection of him counting the dollar bills in front of me.
Well, that was only $500 that
That's
he counted.
correct.
Okay, but how the breakdown of the monies went for the whole 1850, that breakdown you got from looking at the calendar, right?
I'm sure it refreshed my memory, yes.
Okay, so my question is, if you looked at the calendar to refresh your recollection about the amount of money, how is it that it didn't refresh your recollection about the insulin?
There's no notation for insulin on this, and as I stated earlier today, in terms of dollars, the dollars being charged for insulin, and you said, why did I give it to him? And I said, because insulin costs a few bucks.
But
There was no charge.
But you looked at the calendar, and the calendar had I on it. And yet in your declaration, you didn't mention insulin, even though you had been relying on this
It was an
calendar.
oversight, and in a follow-up declaration, I did include insulin.
Okay, so your testimony is that later on you included insulin.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that. Now, you say at paragraph 14 of the declaration, you said, I was approached by journalists from the New York Daily News, USA Today, and Sports Illustrated, and asked to respond to Mr. Mosley's false public comments that I had deceived him about the nature of the performance-enhancing drugs, right?
The information involving Sports Illustrated is a mistake,
In what sense is it a mistake?
and that I never talked to Sports Illustrated.
Never spoke to Sports
No,
Illustrated.
I never spoke
Let's
to
get a
them.
time frame.
At any time did you speak to...
Post me receiving and being served with the lawsuit, I talked to Sports Illustrated, but before that, I'd never had any contact with Sports Illustrated.
Did you ever send an email to anyone
No, I
at
did
Sports
not.
Illustrated?
I never sent an email to Sports
You
Illustrated.
have to let me finish the
your
question.
Start your question.
Did you ever send an email to Sports Illustrated?
No, I did not.
Okay.
This apparently was in your claim, which was wrong, and the previous law firm that drew this up probably took this out of your claim, and when I read the list of reporters after I'd been served the lawsuit, there were a time or two that I was contacted by a couple of reporters from Sports Illustrated, but it was after I was served with this lawsuit, not before. Before this lawsuit, I never had any contact with any Sports Illustrated reporter.
So this was just another mistake under oath.
No, yes, it's a mistake under oath, but the original article written by Tim Smith, where they cite the information coming from Sports Illustrated, is in your original claim, which is wrong. There was no email, there was no communication, there was no article. The article that was in Sports Illustrated that Tim Smith from the New York Daily News referred to is the article about the WADA conference where they disclosed the hematocrit levels and talked about the calendars and other information. And I believe that was written by Luis Fernandez.
Okay, let's move on. It's the same one. Was there only one declaration in California? I think there's two.